Part 1. The Dying World and the Expanding Shadow of Ruin. The Hero of Ages opens on a world already collapsing under the weight of an unstoppable cosmic force. Ash falls more heavily than ever before, blanketing the land in suffocating layers that choke crops, darken the sky, and turn farmlands into wastelands. The mists, once merely a nighttime phenomenon, now linger into daylight and sometimes appear at random, killing people with mysterious, unpredictable consistency. Earthquakes become common tremors felt across regions. Entire populations starve or flee from failing cities. It is clear from the first chapters that the very fabric of the world is unraveling. This devastation is the work of ruin, the cosmic entity accidentally freed by Vin when she used the power of the Well of Ascension at the conclusion of the previous book. Ruin, subtle, patient, and omnipresent, works tirelessly to twist events toward destruction. Unlike a physical villain, Ruin does not attack with armies alone. He exists inside the small, quiet moments where human intentions can be bent. He manipulates the written word, reshapes metal inscriptions, whispers through hemalurgic spikes, and fuels paranoia, anger, and despair. No plan, no map, no text can be trusted. If it contains metal, Ruin can alter it. Vin carries the weight of having let Ruin loose. Her guilt is a palpable undercurrent in her scenes, shaping her behavior, heightening her sense of responsibility, and reinforcing her lifelong fear that she is fundamentally dangerous. Having grown up as a street urchin conditioned to distrust even her own instincts, she now finds herself distrusting reality itself. Every clue they find may be a lie. Every ally might be influenced. Every thought she has could be subtly nudged. This paranoia, however justified, pushes her toward isolation, even as she works beside Elend. Elend Venture, now a Mistborn thanks to the power Vin gave him at the well, rules as emperor over a fractious, unstable coalition of cities. His leadership has evolved dramatically since the final empire. Once an academic idealist, he has become pragmatic, decisive, and at times ruthless. Yet Elend still grapples constantly with a moral tension. How to wield necessary power without becoming another tyrant. He commands Koloss armies, once the tools of the Lord Ruler's brutality, and must decide how far he is willing to go to preserve civilization. His discomfort with violence makes him a better person than his enemies, but also creates political vulnerabilities. Together, Vin and Elend search for the massive storage caches hidden centuries earlier by the Lord Ruler. Each contains food reserves, supplies, allomantic metals, and, most importantly, scratched metal plaques offering cryptic warnings and fragmented insights into the nature of the world. These clues, though corrupted by ruin, suggest that the Lord Ruler anticipated this apocalypse and sought to buy humanity 1,000 years of survival. But Vin and Elend soon discover that every step forward reveals deeper manipulation. Ruin has been altering prophecies for centuries. He has rewritten ancient records. He influenced the minds of past heroes. The fabled Hero of Ages itself may be a lie. And each time a city falls or a hope fails, Ruin's power strengthens. Despite this, humanity continues to resist, and the search for answers becomes the driving force that links every major character arc as the novel unfolds. Part 2. Sazed's Crisis of Faith and the Heavy Burden of Knowledge. Among the novel's most profound and introspective storylines is Sazed's. Deeply bereaved by Tindwyl's death, Sazed enters the Hero of Ages as a broken man. Once the most hopeful, disciplined, and spiritually grounded of the crew, he is now hollow, adrift, and bitter. His grief is not simply sadness, It is a tearing apart of his worldview. Sazed had always believed that the religions he preserved contained wisdom capable of giving meaning to suffering. Now he finds only silence. Sazed meticulously works through every religion he has recorded, hundreds of them, searching for a belief system that can offer comfort or truth. But each in turn fails his scrutiny. The contradictions he once embraced as part of faith now feel like insurmountable flaws. His logical mind, sharpened by the discipline of the keepers, will not allow him to accept comfort without evidence. Thus, the more deeply he analyzes religion, the more he unravels it. His notebook becomes a graveyard of rejected beliefs. Traveling with Breeze, Alrian, and their retinue, he helps where he can, organizing displaced citizens, mediating disputes, and offering logistical support. But his actions are mechanical, stripped of emotional engagement. Sazed describes himself as a man performing tasks without believing in them, and his companions sense the emptiness behind his once warm presence. Sazed's arc embodies one of the foundational themes of the novel. That meaning is not found in certainty, but in the attempt to reconcile conflicting truths. He assumes that truth must be singular, that some religion must be correct. What he cannot yet see is that meaning may lie in the synthesis of beliefs, the common threads, the shared moral intuitions scattered across cultures. His fixation on finding one true faith blinds him to the possibility that every faith holds a fragment of the truth. Yet Sazed's pervasive grief and loss do not render his arc irrelevant to the plot. On the contrary, his disillusionment becomes essential. Only someone who has torn belief systems apart can ultimately reassemble them. His vast but fractured knowledge positions him uniquely to interpret the final clues left by the Lord Ruler and the ancient Terrace prophets. But at this stage of the story, Sazed cannot yet comprehend this future role. Psychologically, Sazed's arc mirrors the world's descent. As society fractures under the pressure of famine, mists, and war, Sazed's inner landscape similarly collapses. Faith once united cultures. Now its absence isolates him. The spiritual foundation he had spent a lifetime building has cracked, and every attempt to rebuild it only brings it further down. His purpose seems lost, until the final acts of the story reveal that this crisis is not a detour, but preparation for the most important role any human will ever play. Part 3: Spook's Transformation and Ruin's Deceptions in Urto. Spook's storyline forms one of the most compelling and tragic character arcs in the novel, illustrating Ruin's most insidious method of manipulation, using a person's deepest insecurities to steer them towards self-destruction. At the beginning of The Hero of Ages, Spook, once the shy, timid member of Kelsier's crew who spoke in street slang, has reinvented himself as a determined agent working undercover in the troubled city of Urto. The city has fallen into the hands of Quellion, a charismatic but tyrannical leader whose purest movement seeks to punish the nobility and enforce harsh justice on anyone connected to the old regime. Quellion's rule includes mass executions, the burning of noble estates, and an authoritarian grip on the populace. Spook arrives feeling unworthy of the legendary company he once kept. Surrounded by the memories of figures like Kelsier, Vin, and Elend, he sees himself as a weak link, someone who contributed little beyond errand running and survival. This longing for significance creates the perfect opening for Ruin. After acquiring a hemalurgic spike disguised as a piece of metal gifted to him, Spook's allomantic tin abilities become massively amplified, turning him into a savant with hyper-vivid senses and supernatural reflexes. These powers are intoxicating but dangerous. Tin savants risk burning away their humanity through sensory overload, and Spook becomes increasingly dependent on the rush of heightened perception. Ruin whispers through the spike, feeding Spook's desire to matter. He convinces Spook that true heroism is found not in compassion or strategy, but in dramatic acts of violence. Ruin encourages him to assassinate Quellion, to embrace pain as purification, to act with passion rather than wisdom. Spook becomes more reckless, driven by grandiose visions of martyrdom and heroism that mirror Kelsier's, but warped into brutality. His relationship with Beldre, Quellion's sister, becomes a turning point. Beldre sees him not as a would-be hero, but as a young man torn between courage and self-destruction. Through her, Spook recognizes the destructive path he is on, a path Ruin intensifies by encouraging Spook to sacrifice innocent lives in the name of revolution. The emotional climax comes when Spook realizes that his newfound confidence is not his own, but Ruin's influence. Removing the spike nearly kills him, stripping away his amplified abilities and forcing him to face his insecurity without supernatural crutches. But this choice restores his autonomy and reveals his true strength, the ability to lead without manipulation. Spook ultimately saves the citizens of Urto, stops Quellion, and restores order, becoming, through humility rather than violence, the hero he longed to be. This transformation becomes a cornerstone for his later role in the New World after the Cataclysm. Part 4. The Kandra Rebellion, Tensoon's Escape, and the Final Secret. Among the most thematically rich threads of the novel is the storyline of the Kandra, the shapeshifters created by the Lord Ruler, who now find themselves at a crossroads as Ruin's influence spreads. Their society, built upon the rigid contract that prohibits them from harming humans or altering their assigned missions, begins to fracture as they realize that every one of their blessings, the spikes granting sentience, allows Ruin to whisper into their minds. Tensoon, imprisoned for treason after aiding Vin in the previous book, becomes a catalyst for change. His trial is a solemn display of Kandra tradition, emphasizing obedience over independent thought. But Tensoon's experiences with Vin have awakened in him a loyalty that supersedes culture. He alone fully understands the magnitude of the threat Ruin poses and the futility of adhering to the contract when the world itself is at stake. Tensoon escapes his imprisonment in dramatic fashion, reclaiming the wolfhound body Vin loved and fleeing across the devastated landscape. Through his journey, we glimpse the world's decline from a non-human perspective, one marked by instincts, sense, and terrain rather than politics and prophecy. Meanwhile, the Kandra as a society confront their darkest truth. The first generation, the original Kandra created directly from Lord Ruler's experiments, reveal a final failsafe known as the Resolution. If Ruin gains full control of the Kandra, the first generation will order the mass suicide of their species by having all Kandra remove their blessings, collapsing into lifeless mist wraiths. This revelation is catastrophic, forcing the younger generations to grapple with their identity and purpose. Are they tools of Ruin, loyal servants of a tyrant's ancient plan, or a people deserving of agency? Ruin uses the Kandra's internal divisions to push for chaos, whispering through stolen spikes and provoking discord. But Tensoon's return catalyzes rebellion, leading the third and fifth generations to rise up and stop the first from initiating the resolution prematurely. Their decision to reject both Ruin and the contract symbolizes a turning point. The Kandra choose free will over obedience. In the midst of this turmoil, the Kandra uncover a final metal plate from the Lord Ruler, hidden deep within their homeland. This plate contains the most important piece of unaltered prophecy yet found, because it was carved in stone rather than metal. It reveals the true nature of the hero of ages and the deeper mechanics of ruin and preservation. Ten soon sends this vital knowledge toward Vin and Elend, unaware that its interpretation will soon determine the fate of the world. Part 5. The Siege of Fadrex, Elend's Fall, and Vin's Ascension. The narrative escalates as Vin and Elend arrive at the city of Fadrex, one of the last remaining strongholds in the Empire. Ruin's influence permeates everything, through altered messages, manipulated leaders, and the restless Koloss armies looming beyond the horizon. Vin senses that the cache beneath Fadrex contains critical knowledge, but the city's ruler, Penrod, partially corrupted by ruin, refuses to open the gates. Vin becomes increasingly unstable as she attempts to discern Ruin's manipulations. Her paranoia, though justified, strains her connection with Elend and her trust in herself. Nevertheless, she continues to hunt inquisitors and enemy Mistborn, searching for clues left behind by the Lord Ruler. Yet every discovery feels hollow. Every writing is suspect. Every prophecy seems designed to mislead her. Elend, meanwhile, must decide whether to storm the city using the Koloss under his command. His moral core recoils at the thought of slaughtering civilians, but time is running out. Ash clouds block the sun. Earthquakes intensify, crops fail entirely. The world approaches its final hours, and hesitation may doom millions. Ruin seizes the opportunity to escalate conflict. His Koloss, mindless, violent, ever-growing in number, threaten to overwhelm all resistance. Vin and Elend's armies face a grotesque mixture of human defenders and frenzied Koloss driven by Ruin's direct will. The battle at Fadrex becomes one of the trilogy's most intense sequences. Vin is captured by an inquisitor, taken before Ruin, and forced to confront her insignificance against a cosmic force. Yet she escapes using sheer determination and Mistborn skill. On the battlefield, Elend faces Marsh in a devastating duel. Marsh, almost fully puppeteered by Ruin, beats Elend brutally. But in the brief moment when Marsh's buried humanity resurfaces, triggered by memories of Vin, Elend manages to swallow Adium. The moment grants him omniscient combat foresight, but Ruin has deliberately hoarded most of the Atium in the world, knowing that preservation's power required its use. Elend therefore has only seconds of advantage. He fights valiantly, but is soon overwhelmed by Koloss. Vin arrives too late to save him. Elend dies with dignity, having fought not for power, but for people. Vin's grief is explosive. Her love for Elend was the anchor that held her to humanity. With that anchor gone, she makes the ultimate choice. She takes up the power of preservation itself. In that moment, Vin becomes a shard, a god, and perceives the world from a cosmic vantage point. She sees Ruin fully, sees how the Lord Ruler manipulated the world's orbit to make it habitable, and recognizes that she cannot defeat Ruin alone. Vin engages Ruin in a final, titanic clash, sacrificing her essence to destroy Ruin's mind. The battle annihilates both shards' consciousnesses, leaving their raw power unbound. But the world is dying faster than ever. Someone must take up both shards, or everything will end. Part 6. Sazed becomes harmony and the world is reborn. In the dust-filled quiet after Vin and Ruin annihilate one another, the world hangs at the edge of oblivion. Continents split. Ashfalls worsen. The planet's orbit remains dangerously close to the sun. Humanity has minutes, perhaps hours, before extinction. At this final moment, Sazed discovers the last set of metal plates brought to him from the Kandra homeland. Unlike the others, these plates are carved in stone or written in substances ruin cannot alter. They reveal the original, uncorrupted prophecy of the hero of ages, a prophecy that never specified one chosen figure, but instead described a person capable of taking up both preservation and ruin, holding them in harmony. Sazed realizes with shock that he is the one who fits every requirement. He is a feruchemist capable of holding vast amounts of knowledge. He is someone who has spent his life studying hundreds of religions, only to understand in his despair that none of them are wholly true, but each contains a piece of truth. He is, fundamentally, a scholar of balance. Where Vin is aligned with preservation and the Lord Ruler acted with ruin's ruthlessness, Sazed embodies the middle path. When Vin and ruin's powers are freed from their minds, Sazed takes them both into himself, becoming something new: harmony. The moment of ascension transforms him into a being of immense awareness. He perceives the planet, the sun, and the cosmic forces shaping the land. He sees the ash mounts as the Lord Ruler designed them, necessary evils to shield the world from the sun's harshness. He understands how to fix each flaw in the planet's structure. With godlike clarity, he begins the work of salvation. Sazed lifts the ash from the sky and dissolves the ash mounts. He alters the planet's orbit, restoring it to the correct distance from the sun. He reshapes the land, heals the wounded, restores water sources, and creates fertile new terrain. He ensures the survivors will awaken to a world renewed, one without oppressive mists or toxic ash. He brings back only those who can return naturally and safely, choosing not to resurrect Vin and Elend, as doing so would violate the balance between life and death. Instead, he honors them through the world they died to save. In the aftermath, Sazed leaves behind metal messages explaining what occurred. Spook, having survived his injuries, awakens as a full Mistborn with Sazed's blessing. He becomes the new leader of humanity, inheriting the combined legacies of Cosmere and Elend. The surviving members of the crew emerge into a transformed landscape, sunlit, green, and full of potential. The trilogy closes not with tragedy, but with renewal. Sacrifice leads to creation. Death gives way to rebirth. The dreams of Cosmere, the ideals of Elend, the courage of Vin, the knowledge of Sazed, all converge to forge a new world.
Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more videos.